Good afternoon, and welcome to another Saturday edition of Doctor to Doctor in the chat room. I am Dr. Rhonda Shaw here in the chat room with Dr. Nicole West. Hey, Dr. West, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's good to see your face in the place as usual.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we've got another variant creeping up. I don't quite understand what all is being said about it. I haven't looked at it very closely. I just know it is another variant. I've seen a couple of my Facebook friends that are showing the world that they are getting their booster vaccine. So I'm ready to kind of look into that. I was in Walgreens the other day and I saw a sign saying, make an appointment. So I'll probably go online and do that because I'm one of those people that have the underlying conditions, right? So I really want to do whatever I can to ensure, if I can ensure, there's a such thing as ensuring that you're safe, to do all I can, right?
Well, and I think you're right, because these days there is no guarantee about anything. I think at one point I thought the vaccine was not necessarily, the cure, so to speak, but I thought the vaccine was going to protect us from getting the coronavirus, period. That's what I was thinking initially. And now it looks like, and maybe I misunderstood this from the beginning, but now it looks as though you can clearly still get COVID. Your symptoms just won't be as severe.
They may be mild, yeah.
Right. So I think we, like you said, we all have to just do as much as we can do to keep us safe and know that there's no guarantees about anything. But I guess that's life, right? There's never any guarantees about anything.
Yeah.
We just have to do what we have to do to keep ourselves as safe as possible. So,
I just think that as it relates to science and research, this thing kind of hit us all at once and we didn't see it coming. So I just think it's going to be a while before we really understand where we're going with this thing and what we need to do, right? So we just have to do what we can. As you always say, we just have to do our part. So stay safe as much as you possibly can. Stay safe. If you can get those vaccines, do that. And I always say, if you don't want to do that, and I wish people would that could, and there's no reason why you shouldn't, but if you can't do that, what a small price to pay in wearing a mask if you're going to save a life. So wear your mask, do all that other stuff that we talk about in terms of physically distancing yourselves and not congregating in large crowds and just not doing stuff that if you're not at least semi-protected, could make you sick, and then in turn make others around you sick. So, yeah.
I got a notification today from one of the news outlets that the first confirmed U.S. case of the new variant was detected in California today. So, these variants, I don't know if this is just the new normal or we're just going to keep going through this or keep having new ones, new strands or strains pop up. But
so the strains, the new variants, I don't see, that's the science thing. Like, I don't get where they come from or how. I don't get the how and the why of them. And so, but I don't know if it's something to do with mutation or I just don't know. But it's real.
Yep.
That's the thing, it's real. So be safe, guys.
Absolutely.
So, we keep our focus in the vein of mental health most of the time. And I was saying on last week, even though we were talking about the verdicts in the Ahmaud Arbery case, and I said, so we're not talking about mental health. And I remember saying, well, not directly anyway. Maybe we are kind of indirectly. And I said that because, of what may or should or possibly is going on with a person that would just take another person's life
Right.
like that, right? There may be some mental health things going on, but then there are times like today when we're just directly talking about it. And, not necessarily a diagnosis, but more so some things that may come with some mental illness. We want to talk about dysfunctional relationships today.
Yeah.
I think what I love about this show, if I can say that, if I have permission to love this show,
you do.
and that I love it because of the transparency, and I love it because of the real life stuff that we talk about, because it's real life.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I've said this for many years now. You can be whoever you want to be on social media.
Yep.
You can even be who you want to be just in front of people, to the outside world.
Right.
But got a whole other thing going on behind the scenes at home or in your personal life or world, right? So dysfunctional relationships, they're real.
Yeah.
And they cause emotional havoc on everyone involved. Yeah. If it's a romantically based relationship, there's emotional havoc on both partners. If it's family or friends, it's emotional havoc on everybody involved, and they're unhealthy. Right. And they add unhealthy challenges to relationships. They also have a distressing tendency that grows more and more as time goes. We can almost interchangeably call them toxic.
Yes, I was going to say that's when they become toxic. Yep.
Yeah, and so if they aren't addressed, what do? They only get worse. They fester, right? So we want to talk about today, like what is it, right? What is a dysfunctional relationship? What is a toxic relationship? What does it look like? And how do they get started? And maybe even why? What is some of the science, even, research behind that? And what are the signs? And then, how do we manage them?
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking up the definition of dysfunctional because it's a term that we throw around pretty, relatively in the English language. But it really means that something that is not performing normally, something that's malfunctioning, having behavior problems or acting outside of social norms. So when you think about it that way, we've all had some sort of contact with a dysfunctional relationship, whether we were in it or whether we had friends or family who was in it and we could detect it and the people who were in it couldn't. But we've all had some kind of experience with a dysfunctional relationship.
Which on your job.
We can all relate, right?
Yeah, it could be, with a coworker, not just a boss. It could be with a coworker. But every time you encounter each other, there are issues.
Yeah.
And that the relationship is toxic. In fact, a person that is not accustomed to this dysfunction or toxicity dreads those interactions.
Yeah. And the person on the other side doesn't even realize it. It feels normal to them. It feels like everyday conversations. They typically can't figure out what problem.
I think to add to that, sometimes they even thrive off of it.
Yes.
They know because they think it's normal, they need it.
Yeah.
to thrive.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
It is. It's those people, and I know a few people who are like this. They thrive on the chaos. When things are comfortable, when things are quiet, when things are calm, they can't handle it. They've been
Mm.
brought up in such turmoil, I guess, that is what becomes normal and familiar and safe. And so it feels unsafe to not have that chaos. And so they, start arguments or, random disagreements about things that don't really matter, just to feel that safety in the chaos again. And that's, talk about head spinning when you deal with somebody like that and
Yeah,
and you don't thrive in chaos. Like, that's so unsettling,
yeah.
so upsetting.
I read somewhere where it said something like, when you start realizing that there's more destructive, time or interaction rather than constructive time
Hmm.
interactions, then you're probably dealing with a dysfunctional slash toxic and often which leads to a dead end
Yes.
relationship.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I read about was how much time people invest
Mhm.
in dysfunctional relationships. And I don't know if that's because they're trying to get it right,
Right.
or I don't know if it's because, oh, now there's an emotional attachment and it's hard to walk away.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because people worry about what they might lose, whether it's status,
Hmm.
things, or
Hmm.
whatever. But
Yeah.
people invest a lot of time. So how do these dysfunctional relationships get started?
Hmm. I was gonna jump in there and say, I think most of us, it's a learned behavior kind of thing. Most of us learn that dysfunction from watching our parents be dysfunctional, um, and maybe thinking that that's normal and that's how you are in a relationship and that's what a relationship looks and sounds like. Whereas somebody else who grew up in a non-dysfunctional household, if they run into a friend or a relationship that feels dysfunctional, red flags go off, sirens go off, all kinds of things go off in their mind that say, this is not right. This doesn't feel right. I don't need to be a part of this. And even for them, it might be hard to walk away. But I think the more you recognize dysfunctional behavior, the easier it might be for you to walk away. Because when you know, you know. When you don't know, that's when it's hard to do anything about it, when it seems normal to you.
So I've got to find a source of this, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. I was looking for it as you were talking because you were like
Hmm.
so on point. So it says a dysfunctional relationship is often the result of our childhood events. Kids who are brought up in a chaotic environment often become dysfunctional partners in their own relationships.
Mm.
These individuals end up using dysfunctional relationship patterns with their partners. They leave relationship issues unresolved for too long. Um, and the journey to a healthy relationship begins by establishing a healthy, secure, and durable understanding with the partner. So, depending on your partner for all of the happiness is another indication of dysfunction.
Mhm.
It can be torturing to deal with ups and downs in a dysfunctional relationship when we desire peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the screaming roller coaster of the relationship.
Mhm.
Um, and so this article says, remember, there is no perfect relationship. It requires continuous healthy communication for conflict management. No matter how good a relationship is, you should never sacrifice your security, happiness, and mental peace for it.
Mhm.
let's talk about some of the signs of a dysfunctional relationship that most people experience, or the types of things that most people experience in these dysfunctional relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Dominance or submission in the relationship.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. So, meaning like who gets the authority to make all the decisions in a relationship, or is it equally shared, one to another, and maybe even based on each other's expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Is your partner being demanding or pulling away in the relationship? Healthy relationships are about compromise. They are about generously shared power to take the decision and to support each other.
Yeah.
Another would be the blame game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was going to say about that shared power experience. I think also if you feel like you're afraid to be honest with your partner about something because you're afraid about what their reaction might be, that to me says you have very little power in the relationship, or there's very little shared power. Because if you can't tell your truth, then you can't be yourself, which means, that other person gets to be who they are, and they're almost essentially telling you who to be. And there's
So would that be losing yourself in a relationship?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you feel like you are losing yourself, you're not able to speak your mind, tell your truth, disagree with your partner, that is a for sure sign of a dysfunctional relationship. If you two can't argue or have a disagreement, without feeling, maybe they belittle you, or you feel really small, or you feel, you can't tell that person how you really, really feel, that's not a healthy relationship.
So as we were doing this research on this topic, one of the things that stood out in my mind was like, some people really look like they have it all together, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how many people, I don't know, how many folks really have probably settled into this lifestyle of dysfunction.
Yep.
Just to maintain whatever, like I said, whether it's status, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting phenomenon because it's a whole lot of folks in this world. And a lot of times what we see ain't what we get.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. We're talking dysfunctional relationships. You're here on 94.7 FM with Dr. Rhonda Shaw and Dr. Nicole West. I'm Dr. the Doctor. We will be right back.
Do you want me to yeah. Hey, we are back. Thank you for sticking around on Dr. the Doctor in the chat room. We're talking about dysfunctional relationships today, and we all have them. Some of us might be in them right now. Some of us might have just gotten out of them. Some of us might be heading into one and we don't even know it yet. So, it's really easy, I think, to get into one of these kinds of relationships, right? Like in the beginning, everything seems great, right? You meet this person, oh my goodness, we have so much in common. They're meeting all my needs. This might be the person, man or woman, who I've been waiting on, who I've been praying for. Maybe you feel like you found the one, whether it's a best friend or a romantic partner. And you may, make plans to spend the rest of y'all's time together. And then you get comfortable, right? Because they have groomed you to respond how they want you to respond and be who you want you to be. I mean, a lot of times dysfunctional relationships include people who are very manipulative. They know exactly what they want other people to do and to say and how to act. And a lot of times we get groomed for that and we don't even notice that it's happening until those red flags start popping up. But by then you are already comfortable, you're in the relationship, you might have made some, commitments to the relationship, and things keep happening over and over again that seem like a pattern, but not a good one, like a negative pattern. And, maybe at that point you are knee deep in this relationship. And kind of like you were saying, Dr. Shaw, at that point, you might be thinking, I can't leave this relationship. Maybe you've been together for years, or your families have, vacationed together, or, whatever things have gone on in the relationship that you might feel like, I can't leave. What do people think? What are they going to say? All of that pressure we put on ourselves because of society. What is Facebook going to say if I say now that I'm single and out talk this man or woman up? So sometimes we stay in those relationships because of the pressure of society. And so we need to be putting ourselves first, because these relationships can be so damaging and so toxic. One of the things that comes to mind is really the brain science behind toxic relationships. There is something called trauma bonding. And it basically means that you have bonded in a negative way with a very dysfunctional person. And research has shown that the more interactions you have with this person, good or bad, some of those reactions mimic in the brain the same receptors and the same reactions that you have when you do a drug like cocaine.
Wow.
You essentially become addicted to that on and off again, that roller coaster of emotions, that up and down.
Habit forming. We talked about that on break. It's habit forming, and it's hard to break.
Yep. I mean, it's just like trying to wean yourself off of a drug. I mean, it literally is. They say sugar's a drug. It is. It mimics the same kinds of reactions in our brain that doing hard drugs does. And trauma bonding and toxic relationships are the same exact way. So you may be wondering, why can't I walk away from this relationship? What is it about this relationship that I can't cut ties with? And you may in fact be experiencing what we call trauma bonding.
And so I would think that in a situation like that, then even if the person were to walk away from that, they trauma bond again and again, unless they, as we said early on in the show, unless it's addressed.
Yeah, I think so. Unless you and I know that sometimes we are skeptical of therapy and counseling, right? And that's fine, to each his own. But you at least have to find a way to do some of that inner work, some of that, inner child work, because that's really where it stems from, is attachment in childhood.
Because here's the thing about therapy. Therapy doesn't work unless there are certain things foundationally in place. Like you got to go with the mindset of, I don't mind being transparent, right? You got to go with the mindset of, I don't mind hearing the truth. Yeah. You can't go with the mindset that if I don't hear what I want to hear,
right,
then I don't, this is not for me. Then I'm mad because they didn't say what I wanted to hear, right? Then you're not there for the right reasons. And I think a lot of people, probably couples more than anything, because we talk about this a lot, with the couples therapy or whatever, people really want to bash, and it's not about, the real sense of like, hey, how can we find resolution and, and work through this and manage this? Because I think couples that go to couples therapy with that mindset actually do well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. You both have to be on the same page, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of you is not going to be able to pull the other along through this. And a therapist will tell you, I'm not going to work harder than you are. My
Ooh,
job
yeah.
is not to work harder than you work in therapy. If you
Mm-hmm.
come and you are willing to be open and really take some feedback, and you're really wanting to process some stuff, then you can really make some improvements.
Mm-hmm.
But most therapists are not going to work harder than their clients. We get burned out too quick doing that.
Well, I think, too, when you talk about how these dysfunctional relationships come about, and you start talking about maybe there was dysfunction in family, and you know what I'm saying, and all of this stuff is
Mm-hmm.
kind of spilled over into adulthood, then, I always think in terms of couples therapy. I always feel like people should get individual therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and then they should get, they should work as a couple, and they should be
Yeah.
working individually, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, you gotta be willing to go inside of you, because I mean sometimes it's us. Sometimes we're the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, let's just be real.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're the problem. And sometimes nobody's perfect. We get that. But
Right.
yeah, but I mean, sometimes we're the problem, and you got to be able to face that if you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to be willing to kind of set your ego aside. None of us want to admit that we might be the problem. I get
No.
that. That's uncomfortable. We don't
Yeah.
like it. It feels very attacking. But if you want your relationship to work, or if you want to have better relationships, or
Period. Mm-hmm.
yeah, we have to put our ego aside a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
times in order
Mm-hmm.
to get better or get some things accomplished.
Yeah.
So you were talking about dysfunctional family stuff, and I think that that's a really good place for us to take a pause and kind of talk about it. Because if you're not in a dysfunctional, intimate, or romantic relationship, if you can't identify with that, I'm almost positive you can identify with dysfunctional family relationships. We all got them. We all got them.
Yes.
So, there is, if you think about a family unit, we all have a certain role that we play in it, whether we're
Mm-hmm.
conscious of it or not. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, we learn those roles very early on.
Mm-hmm.
So you might hear a little bit of yourself in some of these as we describe them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's what is called the enabler or the caretaker. That's
Mm-hmm.
the person who kind of protects and takes care of the problem in order to keep the family going, to keep things afloat.
Mm-hmm.
That person might take on the burden and the responsibilities of the problem to prevent the family from going into crisis. So what does that look like? Well, an example might be, let's say you have a brother or sister that just can't get right. They just don't make very good decisions. Maybe they're hopping from job to job or apartment to apartment. Well, the enabler is the person who's going to be, okay, you can't pay your rent this month because you spent it all on, clothes and shoes. All right, I'm going to help you out this time. But next time, you're going to have to fend for yourself. And then next time comes around.
Now, Dr. West, folks are listening, like it's probably some folks ready to throw the radio right now.
Because we all know one, or we are one.
We either are one or we know one.
Absolutely.
or a little bit of both.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'll admit, I've enabled both other people and myself in my lifetime. It's easy to do. It's easy to do.
It's so easy to do. But I think the part about enablers is, or enabling even, is when you know better, as my grandmother, God rest her soul, Wilbur Shaw, she's getting so much time on the show lately. When you know better, you do better, right? You know
supposedly.
better,
Yeah.
you do better.
Yeah.
So if somebody brings it to your attention that that's what you're doing, because I try to tell people all the time, even when as it relates to my own children, right? This
Mm-hmm.
ain't reality. It's not reality for somebody to come to your rescue
Yes,
all the
all the
time.
time.
Yeah,
Right.
this is being done out of folks loving you,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and they're loving you, unfortunately, in an unhealthy way.
Right.
They don't mean to.
Right. That's it. Yeah. They are hindering your growth
Yeah.
accidentally because they love you.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it feels like I'm doing the right thing, but it's temporary because I'm
And
going to
to the
have to do
person
it
on the
again.
receiving end, it's what they want in the moment because that person can't see futuristically, right? Those people
Right.
don't think ahead. They don't think
Mhm.
about, I used to remember my grandmother used to say, I ain't gonna be here forever, you know,
Yeah.
and that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Nobody's going to be on this earth forever. So,
Yeah.
you need to, whoever you are, you in general, get it together.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
enabling stuff is, woo,
It's
why you
big.
bring that up, though?
Well, we can move on to the next one.
Okay.
Because most of us, I mean, that one hits hard. We've all enabled somebody, even if it was ourselves. I know I don't enabled my bad behavior plenty of times.
Yes.
So that one hits home.
Yeah.
So the next one is the hero of the family. This person takes on the role of making the family look good.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of, at all costs, they try to make everything on the outside look normal, even when things are really not normal on the inside.
Chaotic. Mm-hmm.
Chaotic. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's the scapegoat. That is the child or the person in the family who has some negative behaviors that take the attention away from the main family problem.
Mm-hmm.
That person that kind of, they might be a little bit, problematic, but they kind of take the heat maybe off of the real issues that the family might be having.
Is that the person that doesn't really want to face the problem? Like, I mean, how people can like try to joke or, I mean, like they never really want to face it head on. It ain't really what it is.
Yeah.
Is that person?
I think it's kind of, say you have two people in a marriage and they're having marriage issues and they have a child that keeps getting in trouble at school. Well, it's easier to focus on the child who keeps getting in trouble. Like that's why
we
we
focus on the marital issues.
Yeah. This is why we have so many issues, because our child is not able to behave. And I keep getting phone calls and I have to leave work. And when really the issue is that maybe the parents can't communicate and the child's watching all their dysfunction, but it's easier to place the blame on the child. Mm-hmm. So they are the scapegoat. They're the person that kind of takes all the heat for the issues, but they're not the main problem. The lost child is the quiet one who tries to escape the situation. That person might often avoid interactions with other family members, which might lead to a lack of social development in the long run. I'm sure we have some of these folks in our family. Maybe we are the lost child, the one that basically tries to kind of stay away because things are just too chaotic, just too crazy. Just can't be apart. It's hard. I get it. Last one, the mascot. That person in the family kind of works to, how should I say this? That person kind of works to.
That's who I was talking about. They're trying to lighten the mood.
Yeah.
That's who I was talking about. Mm-hmm. They use humor as their distraction.
Yeah.
They're kind of the comedy person in the group, and to kind of take the focus off reality. and just kind of make light of the situation. But, after all the laughter dies down or whatever, the dysfunction and the problems remain. It's kind of like an alcoholic, right? When they sober up, problems are still the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like, I think about the difference in personalities between me and my sister. She is absolutely the goofy, life of the party, the person who always lightens the mood, breaks the tension with some, silly joke or dance or something.
And I kind of think that's good in a way, but you still have to be realistic, right? I think it's good to have somebody that can keep things, a little bit lighthearted, you know what I'm saying, sometimes, and not be so serious all the time. But at the same time, if there's a problem, we cannot walk away as if the problem doesn't exist.
Yeah. Real quick, here are some signs that you might be living in a dysfunctional family. If vacations are stressful, and vacations they may be stressful, right? But not the actual having fun part of the vacation. Like every part of the vacation is just stressful.
Like every time you go somewhere with your family, some goes south, some goes wrong, that kind of stressful.
It's always a problem.
Yeah.
Your parents having separate rooms. Your family living in silence. Basically, when y'all are around each other, nobody says nothing. Everybody's trying to keep the peace. And the only way to do that is to be quiet. You get or you give double messages. There's a lot of a lack of you being able to bring people home, like your friends. You just want to kind of keep everybody out because your family is just so chaotic. So those are just a couple examples of what it might feel like to live in a dysfunctional family.
Yeah, we can share some more of those, but it's time for a break. We're going to go to break, and we will be right back on Doctor to Doctor in the chat room. We'll be right back in a moment. We are still here on 94.7 FM on Doctor to Doctor in the chat room with Dr. Rhonda Shaw and Dr. Nicole West. We're talking all things dysfunctional relationships today. Let's talk a little bit about share why you see people staying in these relationships. I kind of spit out a few things early on, but those were kind of my thoughts. Like, are these the reasons? But I think research shows that there are some solid reasons, that people have listed for why they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of them is a lack of understanding of what love really is, right? Most people who stay in a dysfunctional relationship just don't understand what that really means. Some of us grow up thinking, if a person is demanding and possessive, that must mean he really loves me. I had a teenage client the other day. It's funny that we are talking about this, but she shared with me that she believes love feels like a boy being mean to her, calling her names. And she said, well, we're always told as young girls that if boys are chasing you or hitting you or being mean to you, it's because
they just like you. Yeah, that's true. Ooh.
And she grew up believing that. And so now if she doesn't get that straight in her thinking,
unlearn it.
Yes, she's going to end up with a man who lives up to all of those things that she thinks is love, which is not what love is supposed to be.
Yeah, my motto, and I don't know who said this when I was going through my doctoral journey, I even have it on one of my social media pages, maybe my LinkedIn, learn, unlearn, relearn. We grow up, we learn, and then we realize we have to unlearn some things, and then we have to relearn the right way. So, yeah. That makes sense. Like maybe not the best thing for us as parents to teach our daughters.
Right. Yeah.
I get why we said it, to keep them
Yeah.
from feeling humiliated and
Yeah.
feeling like they were being degraded, right? But maybe not the best thing to say to them.
Right. Right. We thought it was harmless, but if
Mm-hmm.
we grow up believing that, it can lead to some harmful,
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional relationships.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other reasons that people stay is hope. They keep hoping and thinking that everything's going to work out one day. If I just, hold on, stick in there, be the ride or die, that things are going to eventually change. And I get that. Of course, we don't want to think that all of our time is going to be wasted and for nothing. That our brain just doesn't allow us to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's harmful, hurtful, and we don't like to be uncomfortable in our thoughts. So of course we're going to be wanting things to work out. We're going to be
Mm-hmm.
wanting things to be positive. But relationships don't survive on just hope alone. Like there's work that has to be done on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is dependency. So if you are a person who wasn't able to develop, that independence or that level of autonomy, and you feel like you need a person in order to be okay or to be strong or to get through, then it makes sense that you're going to stay in a relationship, whether it's a good relationship or bad. You might feel like this is the best I can do, or I mean, this person means so much to me and I can't leave them. That dependency issue is really big for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
People often stay for their children. They say,
That's a
I want
big
to,
one.
yeah, I want my kids to grow up in a two-parent home. I didn't have that growing up, and so I want to make sure my kids have that. I was just watching a special the other day with Oprah. She was interviewing Adele, and Adele was opening up about her divorce and how hard it was for her to make that decision. And she said something that I thought was so spot on. She said, "You can love your kids just as much when you leave as you can for staying." Like we all think, if I stay, it's because I love my kids and I want them to live in this two-parent household. But she said, it doesn't mean you love them any less because you leave. In fact, you might love them even more for leaving. So they
And
don't
because
leave.
you become healthy, right?
Yeah,
You can provide a healthier love because
absolutely.
many times, when folks part ways, they end up using the child
Yeah.
in a negative way to hurt the other parent, as opposed to it being a healthy situation, right? So
Right.
I don't necessarily always buy that anyway. As a matter of fact, and when I say I don't buy it, I don't mean it in a facetious way. I'm just saying that I think that many times what people are saying their reason for staying is, it's not even really that.
Right.
It's
Sometimes
what
we're
it's what
using,
it's what they're comfortable
yes. Sometimes
saying.
we're using that as an excuse
Mm-hmm.
because we're scared to leave. And
Absolutely.
it makes sense to say we're going to stay for the kids. That
Mm-hmm.
feels comfortable to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are some of the reasons that people say, and I'm sure there's a ton of other ones. But those are just the most common reasons why people stay in dysfunctional relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to move on to how we fix those dysfunctional relationships?
Yeah. But before you do, something interesting in the article that we had about the dysfunctional families,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the signs.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the signs literally align with narcissistic behaviors.
Mm.
Like, there's constant ridicule and criticism
Uh-huh.
within the family. There's bullying and gaslighting, controlling behaviors.
Wow.
Um, shaming and guilt trips, manipulation. This is
Yeah.
family stuff. Withholding love, affection,
Ooh.
or even in the marriages, withholding sex, contempt.
Yeah.
It outright says narcissistic behaviors, unpredictable emotional outbursts, verbal abuse, sarcasm that's used to,
as a joke.
Yes.
Yeah.
Name calling, lack of respect, extremely jealous, and suspicion. I think that's a very interesting one, suspicion.
Yeah.
Spitefulness, turns others in the family against you. Regularly invalidates others in the family.
Yeah.
Likes to play mind games.
That, yes. Oh, Lord.
That's something.
Yeah. All of it sounds just so familiar.
Yeah. But when you go through stuff like this, I think it's just we talk about norms and what norms are. And norms are just what they are. It feels normal. And so and it's happened for so long. And I think that's why when people have an outburst, right? We call it snap, when people snap.
Yeah.
And and it's like, oh, well, they've been doing that for years. But it wasn't right. It didn't feel good.
Right.
And finally somebody couldn't handle
it anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
no, that was just such a good point, because we all say that, well, it's been happening for years. That's just how it's been done. It doesn't make it right. It's been wrong for years.
Been wrong for years.
Yeah. And
we got to unlearn some of these behaviors. And this is not tied to any ethnicity,
right?
Or gender or race, or it is not.
Right.
It's all over. It's across the board. Yep. It doesn't matter if you are Jew or Gentile. It doesn't matter if you are Black, white, or Native American. It doesn't matter. It's happening in all families.
Yeah.
Whether it's extended family or, it's happening. Because people don't, in general, think it's important to maintain healthy relationships, period.
Yep. And maybe don't even know how.
Nope.
Don't know how to maintain a healthy relationship.
Nope.
And it might just make, again, we talk about chaos. It feels comfortable if that's what you grew up in. So.
Yeah, to operate in chaos for me would be so exhausting.
Yeah. But I know a very, very good friend of mine that grew up in chaos, and really kind of mimics that in every single relationship that he has, whether it's at work, whether it's a romantic relationship, his family. He has fallen out with his sons over and over again, with the moms of the sons, with girlfriends, with best friends, with coworkers. And I think it usually happens when things get to be too calm, when things get too normal. Then there's some random argument that happens, or some random thing that somebody did wrong.
So does he notice that, or you notice that?
I notice it. I don't think he notices it. Or if he does, it might be one of those things like you said. This is just the way I do things. It is what it is.
Some people just need to put down the phone, and I'm talking about literally talking on the phone. All you do is stay on the phone talking to folks about this, that, and the other, and your business, their business, everybody's business. And a lot of times people like that talk about everybody's business but their own, to be honest.
Right.
Put down the devices and get off social media, and and just get inside yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
it just should come a time in life where you just want to be a better person.
Right.
One of the things that I've done, and I'm going to, I've told you this, I'm going to one day publish a lot of it. One of the things that I've done in my life, and I've done a really, really good job of it, and I don't know if it was the teacher in me or what that made me document the way I have, but I have kept a journal. I have journaled every day of my life for the past, I don't even know how many years.
Wow.
I don't even know. I honestly don't know. Like, I started with all these little books that, I don't know, like diary kind of things or whatever. But even now, sometimes some of it is in my memos or my notes in my phone, because maybe I'm not in a position where I can grab something and write. But the only thing I will miss is, say, a day. And if I do, then tomorrow I go back and I fill in yesterday.
What happened. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always a highlight in your day. There's always something about your day that stands out, even if it ain't nothing but, dog, I slept all day.
Right.
Right. And, I think we just need to get inside ourselves, because what's interesting about that and doing that is, if I were to just go back and read 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And, the place that I was in and the headspace that I was in 6 months ago, I'm usually blown away by it myself to know what I was thinking or feeling
back then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it really does allow you to, almost take inventory of your life and the things that are going on and the things that are important to you and how far you've come. I mean, I think about my journey just a year ago.
Yeah.
And thinking at that time, it was the kind of the beginning of being divorced and, just a weird transition. And I remember thinking, like, this is going to go on forever. This is going to feel like this forever. And a year later, it feels very different. And I don't know how much I could appreciate that if I couldn't go back and look at the way I was thinking back then and what I was feeling back then.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just a great way to kind of
and it's an easy way to figure out how to be better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you really got some notes about who you are and who you were. And yeah, if that's who I was last week, how do I get better this week? How am I better at that?
Yeah. And I think you're right. It gives you such insight into how do I manage things? How do I think about things? What's my point of view? Because the way that our perspective, it means so much about how we decide to handle certain situations.
Yeah, and I think that's what you probably need to just talk about, just a few things, since we only have a few minutes left, on what do we do? How do we fix these dysfunctional relationships, because we only have a few minutes, like a couple of minutes till break.
Okay. So how do you fix that dysfunctional, those dysfunctional patterns or interactions in your relationship? So one way is to really invest in, we just talked about this, personal growth, both individual and as a couple, right? Find things that are interesting and exciting to you as an individual. Figure out who you are, figure out what you want, and what you will accept, what you value and what you don't. And then you can bring that new knowledge into this new relationship and establish some new boundaries with each other. And you should do that together too. Figure out what the two of you like. Show a mutual willingness to improve and work together. Be responsible for your behavior, your actions in a relationship. it's easy to point the finger, but
Mm-hmm.
be responsible for your own actions. Take
Mm-hmm.
accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Initiate meaningful conversations with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about real stuff. Be patient, flexible, and try maybe some couples therapy or meeting with a pastor or anybody who can help you to manage your emotions and your relationship and help you get better and be better for each
Mm-hmm.
other.
Yeah. And be realistic.
Yes.
Be realistic
Absolutely.
and be honest,
Yeah.
Every time we have a good topic, it seems like the time just flies
Right. We
by.
don't have enough
And
time.
we're
Yeah.
already out of time. But we want you guys to come back, and we do thank you. We do thank you for coming back every Saturday, and we want you to come back next week. Same chat channel, same chat time, right here on Doctor to Doctor in the chat room on 94.7 FM. We will see you guys then. We'll be back next week.